Before we start this episode, I want you to do something with me. This street, where in a single year, multiple workers die. Some die on the job. Some die during work trial. Some die from overdose. Some die by suicide after public harassment. Some are found dead in hotel rooms, which are under current investigations. Imagine that industry has no federal fatality tracking, no OSHA reporting, no mandatory safety standards, no employer responsibility, no workers' compensation, no official body count. And when someone dies, the response is always the same. That was personal. That wasn't work related. They chose that lifestyle. If this were construction, we'd shut it down. If this were aviation, the planes would be grounded. If this were mining, Congress would hold hearings. But because this industry sells sex, because it makes people uncomfortable, because it's easier to look away, no one counts the dead. Here's the part that should stop you cold. This industry calls itself empowering. It calls itself liberating. It calls itself safe. And yet when people die, there is no system that asks why, because the entire thing is built on one phrase: independent contractor. That single classification allows billion-dollar platforms to profit while saying, we're not the employer. We're just the host. We're not responsible. So when a creator falls from the balcony while filming, when another overdoses on fentanyl, when another is found dead in a hotel bathtub, when another is even harassed into suicide, the platforms keep running, the subscriptions keep renewing, and the algorithm keeps feeding content. But the body disappears into silence. Tonight, we're not speculating. We're not moralizing. We're not shaming. We're naming names. We're citing law, and we're breaking down how the system works legally, structurally, and intentionally. Because if an industry can't survive counting its casualties, then maybe the problem isn't the people who died. Maybe the problem is the system that refuses to see them as workers at all. In America, if you work in a mine and die, there's a number for that. If you work on an oil rig and you die, there's a number for that. If you're a police officer, if you're a firefighter, if you're in the military, there's a system that counts you, records it, and demands answers. And not because these systems are perfect. They aren't. But because at minimum, we agree on the principle. If your job carries risk, society has an obligation to track the harm so it can be reduced. Here's the uncomfortable question. Where's the official count of adult content creators? Where's the national reporting system? Where's the occupational fatality tracking for creators of filming, traveling for collabs, dealing with stalking, dealing with online mob harassment, drowning in addiction, or even spiraling out under algorithmic pressure? It's not that people don't die, they do. It's that the deaths don't get treated as occupational hazards. They get treated as personal tragedies, or gossip, or morality tales. And that right there is the loophole that keeps this machine running. Because if you don't classify the risk as work-related, you never have to. If you never regulate the work, you never have to admit the system is built on a lie. I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to walk through documented 2025 deaths involving adult content creators, cases reported by major outlets, and some are still even being investigated. Second, and this is the heart of the episode, I'm going to explain why the modern adult content economy is uniquely dangerous and hard to, because it's built around one legal, independent phrases doing more work than any performer ever could. And if we don't talk about it, the list grows next year. Ana Pauli Alves, the death that happened during the shoot. January 2025, Brazilian OnlyFans model Ana Beatriz Pereira Alves, known online as Ana Pauli, died after falling from a hotel balcony in Brazil. She was reportedly filming content with two men at the time of the fall. Authorities treated it seriously enough that they were still working to determine whether it was an accident or something else. Because when someone dies at a filming location with multiple people present, there are questions you can't ethically ignore. And this was the first major point of the episode. This wasn't a factory. It's not a set, not a workplace with inspectors. It was a hotel room functioning as a studio, because the internet has turned private spaces into production sites. If that doesn't make you uneasy, it should, because it means the workplace is whatever place the creator can afford that day. And at that point, safety often becomes optional. Next, we have Joy Diablantine Luxi 2025, OnlyFans model known as Julie Luxy was found dead in her apartment south of Paris. What made that story hit differently? Reports described a scene involving nitrous oxide canisters and ongoing investigation into circumstances leading up to her death. I want to be careful here because cause of death determinations should come from investigators and medical authorities, not from the internet. But the bigger issue is unavoidable. Build a digital and thousands of people following you and still die alone in a room while the machine keeps running. That's a structural problem, not a personal flaw. Then we have Kylie Page. In 2025, adult performer died from an accidental overdose involving fentanyl and cocaine. TMZ was the source. This one matters because fentanyl is not a party mistake. It's a modern executioner person. And when fentanyl shows up in a young person's toxicology, it is a reminder that we're living in an era when one bad decision or one contaminated supply can end you. It also points towards a pattern. Substance abuse risk is disproportionately common in this industry and other industries where identity, intimacy, and performance are monetized, where stigma isolates people, and where the pressure never turns off. Iris Haishia, she was found dead in a hotel during a working trip. Case has been investigated as a murder. In October of 2025, Taiwanese influencer, also known as Haishia Yushin, was found dead in a hotel bathtub. Reports said she had traveled there connected to a commercial collaboration. And here's the part that demands adult attention. Authorities later reclassified the case as a murder investigation. And Malaysian rapper and filmmaker Wing Min-chi was also detained to assist with the investigation, according to the Associated Press. CBS News similarly reported she was found dead in the bathtub and surrendered as a person of interest. This case illustrates a brutal truth about creator economy. Travel for work used to mean your employer had some duty of care. HR meant policies. It meant someone was accountable. Now you fly out, meet up with collaborators, and if something goes wrong, you're a private individual in a foreign country trying to navigate a system that may not care about your line of work. The platform profits from your uploads, but claims it has no responsibility for anything that happens to you. We have to stop calling that empowerment. Let's talk about Gina Lima. In November 2025, Filipino influencer Gina Lima died at age 23. 3 days later, her ex-boyfriend, Ivan Cesar Ronquillo, also a creator, died at 24. Reports in the Philippines described the initial autopsy indicators an ongoing investigation around Gina Lima's death, including findings like lung and heart congestion, while also noting that external injuries were not determined to be the cause. And reporting also described Ronquillo's death as suicide and discussed online harassment. This case matters because it shows how digital labor comes with digital violence. When your life is public content, your death becomes public content too. And people feel entitled. Angry mob energy, especially when someone is involved in adult work, can become a death sentence. Mary Magdalene. In December 2025, influencer and OnlyFans creator Denise Yvonne Jarvis Gangora, known as Mary Magdalene, died after falling from the 9th floor of a high-rise in Thailand. Authorities reportedly investigated circumstances with details like personal items found near the scene described in coverage. Again, we respect the investigation, but we can still talk about the larger pattern. A person's income depends on constant attention. In escalating extremes, mental health becomes part of the occupational hazard. And the platforms, they don't treat it as a hazard. They treat it as engagement. Now we'll get into the legal structure that ties all this together. Modern adult content creation, especially on platforms like OnlyFans, is not organized like traditional employment. It's organized like a gig economy. Creators are treated as independent businesses. They're expected to handle everything: compliance, safety, taxes, security, contracts, mental health, and crisis. That model is not accidental. It's the business plan. Because the moment a platform admits creators function like employees, it starts inheriting obligations. So instead, the platform economy is built to keep creators on the other side of the legal line. And here's what that line controls: Who must provide a safe workplace? Who pays for workers' compensation? Who carries liability for hazardous conditions? Who must comply with wage and hour laws? Who is responsible for basic protections? OSHA shows you the problem in one sentence. OSHA's core duty is aimed at the employers providing safe conditions to employees. The general duty clause says each employer shall furnish to each of his employees a place of employment free from recognized hazards likely to cause death or serious harm. Read that carefully. Employer to employees. So what happens when the platform says, not the employer? They're not employees. You just push the work into a space where classic workplace safety laws doesn't neatly attach. That's not an accident. That's the loophole. The IRS and DOL both acknowledge classification is fact-based and contested. The IRS explains that worker classification depends on evidence of control and independence, evaluated across categories like behavioral control, financial control, and the relationship of the parties. It's unclear the IRS has a formal mechanism on SS-8 to request a determination. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Labor has repeatedly emphasized that misclassifying workers as independent contractors can deny them protections like minimum wage and overtime. It mandates an approach grounded in economic reality, whether the worker is economically dependent on the employer. Now notice something. Even the government agencies admit this is complicated, fact-specific, and often litigated. So imagine how complicated it gets when the workplace isn't a job site. It's a bedroom, a hotel, rented apartment in Kim's, a shoot set up with strangers, a business relationship mediated by a website that takes 20% of the money but says it's not responsible for what happens to the bodies generating the revenue. Traditional porn had its own scandals and dangers, no question. It had one thing that matters for regulation: centralization. Studios, sets, producers, business entities. Even when studios were bad actors, at least they were actors. You could name, sue, regulate, pressure. But the platform era dissolved that structure. The studio is wherever the creator is standing, and that makes enforcement almost impossible. What the law still treats creators as, even when platforms won't. Here's the brutal irony. Platforms creators like independent contractors to avoid labor responsibility. But federal law can still treat creators as producers in certain contexts. And for example, 18 U.S.C.C. 2257 requires producers of sexually explicit visual depictions to create and maintain age verification records for performers. Legal information and the implementing regulations sit in 28 CFR Part 75 outlining record-keeping requirements and exceptions. ECFR, so the creator is independent when it comes to safety and benefits, but in our other legal areas, the creator can still be treated as the responsible producer. That's a one-way ratchet. Responsibility flows downward. Protection obviously does not. Let's talk reality. When you're an independent contractor, you buy your own equipment, you choose your own locations, you pick your own collaborators, you cover your own insurance. If you can get it, you take all the risk. And in end-to-end adult content, that risk includes physical harm during filming, unsafe locations, dangerous partners, coercion and pressure to escalate acts, stalking and harassment, blackmail, and extortion. Substance abuse is coping, mental health collapse under constant exposure. If you're an employee at a warehouse, you tell the boss, this is unsafe. There's a framework, imperfect but real. If you're a platform creator and you tell the platform, my work is unsafe, what happens? They can terminate your account for violating terms, or they can ignore you, or they can say that's not our responsibility. And here is where the internet will try to confuse you. They'll say, well, creators keep 80%. Okay, and keeping a percentage doesn't equal having protections. A coal miner paid better still deserves safety rules. I'm not claiming OnlyFans is legally shielded from everything. That's not how law works. But we have to acknowledge the broader structure of platform liability in the U.S. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act says that no provider of the interactive computer service shall be treated as a publisher or speaker of information provided by another content provider. That provision, right or wrong, helped create an internet where platforms can host user content without being automatically liable for everything users do. Section 230 has limits, and there have been reforms and carve-outs. For example, FOSTA SESTA created federal and state enforcement pathways around sex trafficking and added 18 USC 2421A, addressing promotion or facilitation of prostitution with reckless disregard tied to trafficking. Why does this matter? Because it shows the philosophy. Platforms fight like hell to remain hosts, not employers. Host status reduces responsibility. Employer status increases responsibility. So the incentive is always the same. Keep creators classified as independent contract. Keep relationships user to platform. And keep responsibility as diffuse as possible. And when responsibility is diffuse, safety dives. In some jurisdictions, lawmakers have tried to address gig worker misclassification. California's AB5 codified the ABC test, building on Dynamex, and created a presumption that a worker is an employee unless strict criteria are met. In the EU, makers move towards a rebuttal presumption of employment for certain types of platform work, placing the burden on platforms to prove there is no employment relationship. I'm not saying adult content platforms automatically fit these frameworks. Every legal test is fact specific. But I'm saying this: the world is starting to realize what the gig economy really is, a system designed to outsource risk. And adult creators may be the most exposed workers in that system because the stigma isolates them. The work is private and decentralized, and the public often doesn't care if they get hurt. Back at the names: Anna Polly, dead from filming in a hotel. Julie Luxie, found dead alone. Reporting described nitrous oxide canisters, mental health, and social media pressure. Kylie Page, fentanyl and cocaine overdose. An epidemic pattern colliding with a high-pressure industry. Iris Hasaya, death in a hotel during a collaboration trip. Case investigated as murder. Collaborator detained. Gina Lima, deaths clustered in days. Online harassment and suicide report. Ongoing investigation. Last but not least, Mary Magdalene. Fatal fall. Investigation. The public narrative shaped by online life and extreme visibility. Different stories, but one structure. A massive money machine where human risk is treated as personal responsibility and business profit is treated as untouchable. Let me be crystal clear. This episode is not a call to criminalize adults. It's not a call to harass performers. It's not a call to pretend lust doesn't exist. It's a call to stop lying about what it is. If the adult creator economy is going to operate at a global scale, if it's going to generate billions, then it needs basic realities, a safety framework. If filming is work, then the conditions should be treated like a workplace hazard issue, not a private lifestyle choice. We already know the logic OSHA is built on. Recognized hazards, serious harm, duty to reduce risk. Number 2, realistic classification reform. If platforms exert meaningful control through content rules, payment systems, deplatforming power, then worker classification questions are not cultural war. They are labor law questions. The IRS and DOL explicitly analyze control and dependence. Third, mental health treated as an occupational hazard. If your paychecks depends on exposure, sexual performance, and constant engagement, mental health is not optional. It's job-related risk. Number 4, anti-harassment and crisis response protocols. Gina Lima and Ivan Ronquillo's case reminds you that online mobs can direct a path to death, can become a direct path to death, and the stigma around adult work makes it worse. Number 5, transparency. If an industry claims empowerment, it should be able to withstand counting its debt. Here's the line I want. Independent contractor is not freedom if it's used to excuse neglect. We are watching the collision of 3 forces: the creator economy, the gig economy legal model, and the adult industry's unique stigma. And when those 3 collide, you get a system that produces casualties without accountability. People fall during shoots. People die alone. People overdose. People end up in international investigations. People get bullied, often even into suicide. And the platform stays clean because it never claimed it employed anyone. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. If you profit from the labor at scale, you don't get to wash your hands when the labor bleeds.